story 1, the knock came at .m. I know this because I was staring at my phone trying to decide whether hours of sleep counted as rest or merely as expensive insomnia. Business trips to nowhere towns. Always screwed with my head. But this Hampton Inn felt different. Housekeeping. Just need to clean real quick. I froze. The voice was male and grilly like he'd been smoking since middle school. I hadn't put out the don't disturb sign because honestly, who bothers you at a.m.? I didn't request housekeeping. I called through the door. Hotel policy. Ma'am, daily cleaning. It won't take but a minute. I moved closer to the peephole. A man in a grey janitor's uniform stood there, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Something about his posture made my skin crawl. He was too still, eager and patient. I said, "No, thank you." He didn't move for a long moment. Hedda stood there, and I could feel him listening. Breathing on the other city off the thin hotel door. Finally, his footsteps retreated down the hallway. He should have chalked it up to overzeal our hotel staff and tried to squeeze in another hour before my client meeting. Instead, I found myself pacing the small room, while that encounter replayed in my head like a broken record. Minutes later, I heard it again, the same knocking rhythm. But it wasn't my door. It was coming from down the hall. I pressed me ear to the door, holding my breath. Housekeeping. Just need to clean real quick. I had to look. My primal gut was screaming that this wasn't right. And Eve learned to trust that voice. It's kept me alive in boardrooms full of predators, and apparently it works in shady hotels, too. I turned the deadbolt as quietly as possible and cracked the door open just enough to see down the hallway room. He was standing there in that same grey uniform. His hands weren't in his pockets anymore. They were on the door handle. He was trying to open it rather desperately. He didn't have a cart, cleaning supplies, or keycards. He was merely a man in a worn-out uniform testing door handles as if he were shopping for unlocked rooms. The human inn must have been smarter than, or maybe just more tired because she didn't answer. He stood there for another seconds, testing the handle again, then moved to my hands were shaking now. I watched him try 3 more doors, the same routine each time. He performed a polite knock, recited the scripted line, and then gently tested the handle. When no one answered, hammered like he had all the time in their world. Like the moment was just another Tuesday morning. Room opened. I couldn't see who answered, but I heard a woman's voice. Groggy and confused, I didn't order housekeeping. Hotel policy, ma'am. Daily cleaning. I don't know. I'm not dressed. Won't take but a minute. Just need to check something real quick. The way he said to check something made my stomach turn. There was hunger in his voice now. Barely contained excitement that hadn't been there. When he knocked on my door, he slammed my door shut and grabbed my phone, fingers fumbling as I dialed different desk. Hampton Inn. This is Derek. How can I help you? There's a man in a janitor's uniform going door to door claiming to be housekeeping. He tried to get into my room, and now he's down the hall trying to go the doors. A man. Ma'am, our housekeeper is a woman and she doesn't start until the blood drained from my face. What? Maria is our only housekeeper on duty today, and she won't be in for another hours. What room are you in? He's at room right now. I think got someone to open their door. I'm calling security and police. Right now. Stay in your room, and don't open the door for anyone. I hung up and pressed my ear to the door again. The hallway had gone quiet to quiet. No voices, no footsteps, nothing. Then I heard it, a soft, muffled crying coming from down the hall that will haunt me until the day I die. I grabbed security latch and chained my door, then dragged the desk, chair over and wedged it under the handle. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, drowning everything else out. Minutes later, I heard running footsteps in the hallway. It had to be security, the police. They were shouting. Then the door slammed open. "Mom, are you okay? Mom, can you hear me?" The crying was louder now. I stayed pressed against mid-door for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, there was a gentle knock on my door. "Miss, this is Officer Martinez with the police department. The man has been apprehended. You're safe now." When I finally opened the door, the hallway was full of people. Police officers, hotel security, paramedics. The woman from was sitting on the floor outside her room, wrapped in a hotel bathrobe, still crying. She was bleeding from her head. The man got inside and hit her with Aristide's spanner. He could have done way worse to the woman if the cops didn't show up in time. Officer Martin has explained that the man had been using the janitor disguise to target female guests. He'd hit 3 other hotels in the past month, always the same route, always the same script. The officer's ex-prison told me everything. Let's just say your call saved her life. I checked out that morning and drove straight home. But I can't shake the image of him standing in the hallway. The patience, the calculation, the way he'd tried my door handle just to see. Just in case I'd been careless with Thelic. I still travel, for work. But now I always request rooms near the elevator. Always check the peephole twice. Always verify housekeeping with the front desk, even if it seems too much. Story to the starlight inside buzzed faintly, its pink and blue tubes flickering like an insect trapped in a jar. My dead Toyota sat in the gravel lot, hood still warm from the long drive. At AM, stranded on an empty desert highway with my phone at % battery. I didn't have the luxury of being picky. This place was it. The man behind the counter barely looked at me when I slid over cash. His hair was slicked back, his eyelids heavy, his yellowed nails tapping the desk in a slow rhythm. He reeked of old coffee and something sour. The room was exactly what I feared, musty air that clung to my clothes, carpet stiff with grime, and a bedspread patterned in faded flowers that had probably survived 3 decades without her. Problem: wash. The thin walls carried every creak and cough from neighboring rooms, but exhaustion outweighed disgust. A few hours of sleep. Then the tow truck in the morning. That was the plan. I had just tossed my shoes toward the wall when a knock rattled the door. Not tentative urgent, through the peephole. I saw a girl who looked like she'd stepped out of a bad memory. Late teens, tear-streaked makeup, tangled light brown hair sticking to her damp face. She hugged herself in a tank top and frayed shorts. Shivering. "Please," she whispered, eyes darting down the balcony. "Can I use your phone? My boyfriend. He left me here with nothing. I just need to call my friend. Every alarm in my head blared, don't do it." But she looked so small. So wrecked, I slid the chain across and cracked the door. "Are you hurt?" I asked. She shook her head quickly. "No, just one quick call. I swear. I'm not crazy or anything. My friend Tasha lives close. She can come get me." Against my better judgment, I unlatched the chain. She slipped inside like water through a crack. Up close, she seemed even younger, with a faint purple shadow blooming on her cheekbone. "Thank you. I'm Emily." She took my phone in trembling fingers and tapped in a number without hesitation. As it rang, her gaze swept the room, pausing on my overnight bag a second too long. "Tash, yeah, I'm at that motel. The Starlight. Off-road room." She glanced at me and smirked faintly. "Yeah, she's alone. Real nice, late 20s. Dark hair, pretty." My stomach turned to ice. That wasn't how you described someone to a rescuer. She can't leave her cars dead. Emily added. Her eyes locked on mine, and the fear was gone. What replaced it was calculation. I stepped back. You need to give me my phone back. Now. 10 minutes, she said softly into the receiver. Perfect. I told her to leave. She smiled warm. And wrong all at once. You know what's funny? People like you always think they're doing the right thing. Makes this part easy. She strolled to the window and peeked out. Tasha's bringing the guys. They're excited to meet you. I made for the door, but she was on me fast. Nails biting into my forearm. Don't be rude. They came all this way. I ripped free. Fumbling with the locks, my hand slipping. With sweat behind me, the balcony slider whispered open. Right on time, Emily sang. Heavy boots hit the floor outside. Voices low and eager. I yanked the door wide and bolted into the corridor, my footsteps echoing. No lights, no night clerk in sight, just darkness swallowing the hallway. I could hear them following at least 2 men. My chest burned, legs screaming, but I sprinted toward the lobby. The office was dark. I veered off, shoving myself into a ground-floor room that had been left unlocked. The bathroom window was tiny and half painted shut. I tore at the frame, glass slicing my arms as I forced myself through. Something hit the main door once, twice then. The bathroom door splintered. I hit the dirt behind the building and ran for the road. The desert clawed at my skin as I stumbled through scrub, every thorn and rock forgotten in my panic. Then I heard it, Rachel, a man's voice, steady, certain. We just want to talk. Emily says you're being difficult. I didn't stop. The gas station half a mile away was shuttered, but the payphone outside worked. My shaking fingers punched. The police came fast. They pulled 3 men and Emily, real name Melissa, from the property. Turned out she'd been luring lone female travelers for months. The desk clerk was her uncle. Room was their set-up, perfect view of the parking lot. Balcony access. No real escape. Months later, I still can't drive past a roadside motel without feeling my chest tighten. And I've learned something I wish I hadn't. The scariest knock isn't from a monster, it's from someone who looks like they need saving. Story 3, the lock didn't sound right when I shut the door. Not broken, just off. Like the tumblers had been nudged out of place recently. I should have taken it as a warning, the sundown. Motel wasn't exactly luxury. But out here on this lonely strip of desert highway, vacancy was a miracle. My body ached for sleep, even if my gut whispered otherwise. The room smelled faintly of mildew and lemon cleaner, an odd mix that didn't hide the stale smoke beneath. The carpet was matted and stiff under my shoes, the kind that might crunch if you were barefoot. I wheeled my bag in, flipped the deadbolt, hooked the chain, and shoved the armchair against the door. Overkill to some, but traveling solo teaches you that overkill is just self-preservation with a price tag. The guy at the front desk had been polite, but his politeness was the wrong kind. He was in his 50s, hair slicked flat against his scalp, and he let his handshake linger when he handed me the key card. You'll appreciate the quiet here, he'd said, grinning a little too long. His gaze had that weighing quality, like he was noting exactly what he'd seen. I told myself it was one night, a shower, some mindless TV, and I'd be gone before sunrise. The bathroom was cramped, the kind where the curtain clung to you as if it had static cling. The water pressure hissed and coughed. Every time I pulled the curtain back, it drifted in again, touching my leg with that damp, cold fabric. By 11, I'd convinced myself I was imagining things. I settled into bed, letting some ridiculous dating reality show fill the silence. That's when the knob turned. It wasn't a knock. It wasn't a jiggle. It was a slow, patient turn, the kind that Waits for you to notice. My breath caught. The deadbolt held. But then came the metallic scrape of something thin sliding into the lock. My phone nearly slipped from my hand as I tried to call 911. Then silence. I thought it was over until the chain rattled. The door opened an inch, just enough to stretch the chain tight. Through the gap, I saw the ugly orange-brown carpet of the hallway, the buzzing light overhead, and a figure leaning just out of full view. They shifted, trying to catch a better angle inside. A deep, satisfied inhale. I screamed, the sound raw enough to tear my throat. The door slammed so hard the chair jumped. My heart hammered so loudly I could barely hear the 911 operator asking me to slow down. The police arrived within minutes. They found nothing, no damage to the lock, no footprints outside. The night clerk, a different man, said only maintenance and housekeeping had master keys. And both worked mornings, probably. A drunk guest, one officer said, but I knew better. That patience at the door, that quiet, wasn't the work of someone confused. By morning, I was packed before the sun fully cleared the horizon. At checkout, the original clerk was back. His smile was thinner now, his eyes flicking toward the back room like something back there was far more interesting than me. Everything all right, miss? He asked. No, I said plainly. Someone tried to get into my room. He swallowed hard. That's not possible. We've got strict security. My gaze dropped to his belt. A ring of keys hung there, too many for his job. One, newer and shinier than the rest, caught the light. Who's your maintenance guy? I asked. His lips parted, then closed. He doesn't come in until later. I called the police again. They learned the clerk, real name Raymond Doyle, had been crafting his own master keys for months. He'd been slipping into rooms booked by women traveling alone, standing in the shadows while they slept, sometimes for hours. For other women had reported waking with that prickling feeling of being watched, but left thinking they'd imagined it. The only reason I wasn't, another maybe, was because I'd been awake. Because I screamed. Raymond's in custody now, but I haven't stayed in a motel since. Every time I hear a door latch shift in the night, I'm back in that dim room, watching the knob turn inch by inch. And the worst part, monsters like him don't always knock, they come holding keys. But out here on this lonely strip of desert highway, vacancy was a miracle. My body ached for sleep, even if my gut whispered otherwise. The room smelled faintly of mildew and lemon cleaner, an odd mix that didn't hide the stale smoke beneath. The carpet was matted and stiff under my shoes, the kind that might crunch if you were barefoot. I wheeled my bag in, flipped the deadbolt, hooked the chain, and shoved the armchair against the door. Overkill to some, but traveling solo teaches you that overkill is just self-preservation with a price tag. The guy at the front desk had been polite, but his politeness was the wrong kind. He was in his 50s, hair slicked flat against his scalp, and he let his handshake linger when he handed me the key card. You'll appreciate the quiet here, he'd said, grinning a little too long. His gaze had that weighing quality, like he was noting exactly what he'd seen. I told myself it was one night, a shower, some mindless TV, and I'd be gone before sunrise. The bathroom was cramped, the kind where the curtain clung to you as if it had static cling. The water pressure hissed and coughed. Every time I pulled the curtain back, it drifted in again, touching my leg with that damp, cold fabric. By 11, I'd convinced myself I was imagining things. I settled into bed, letting some ridiculous dating reality show fill the silence. That's when the knob turned. It wasn't a knock. It wasn't a jiggle. It was a slow, patient turn, the kind that waits for you to notice. My breath caught. The deadbolt held.